Hey guys, welcome back. So today we are looking at lesson 3. So lesson 3 is changing elevations. So we're going to be looking more at changing different real life numbers that can have both positive and negative values that work with them. So what we're looking at first is the cliffs and caves. So you're going to see that here on the screen. So let me just scroll down. All right, so a mountaineer is climbing on a cliff. She is 400 feet above the ground. If she climbs up, this will be a positive change. If she climbs down, this will be a negative change. That makes sense. If we're up and we go further up, it's going to be more positive. If we're up and then we go down, while we might still be at a positive value, it is a negative. We're going down. Think of down as being negative in this case. So that's going to be our negative change. So what we want to do is complete this table. So let me get that all set up. Okay, I'm going to zoom in so we can see this a little better. So we have our starting elevation for the first example is 400 feet. It's 400 for all of them we're starting at for our elevation. The change in feet, so for this first one, she goes up 300. So if we're at 400 and then we go up 300, where are we going to be at? 700 and a positive 700 more specifically. For situation B, we're starting at that 400, but this time instead of going up, we're going down 150. So if we go down 150, what final elevation will we be at? 250. So a positive 250. Now for C, we're at 400. Then she's going down 400. So what's our final elevation? 0. Excellent. So anytime we take and subtract by the same amount, it cancels it out. So you may notice that I did not put a plus 0 there, nor a minus 0. 0 is neither positive nor negative, so we don't put a positive or negative expression on it when we're taking and looking at it. 0 is just 0. So anytime you get your elevation of 0, it's going to stay that 0. Don't take and change it to a positive 0. While I won't necessarily mark you wrong, it's just not something that is actually math appropriate because 0, like I said, it's not positive or negative. It's a neutral number. All right, and the last one you may notice looks a little different, yes? So this time we have our starting elevation, we have our final elevation, but we don't know what the change was. So how might we take and solve for that? Well, hopefully you guys are thinking that we can subtract the two numbers to take and find out what that change is. So what do we have to, if we subtract 50 from 400, what are we going to end up with? 350. Excellent. So 350 down. So don't forget to include the down there because if we just said 350, we wouldn't know if we need to go up 350 or the down 350. And if we went up 350, we'd be at 750, which is very different from just 50. So be careful when you're expressing something as a change in a value, you need to say whether it's up or down. Okay? Fantastic. I know I'm answering myself. Bad habit. All right. So zoom back out. For part B here, we want to write an addition equation and draw a number line for B and include the starting elevation, the change, and the final elevation in our diagram. So I'm going to make myself a little bigger here. Hopefully I can move you over. Perfect. Okay. So if we look back up at B, we know our starting elevation was 400. So we have the 400. Our change in elevation was the down 150. So like it says, we want an addition problem, so we're going to put plus, but then we're going to use parentheses because how would we represent down 150? Well, what would we do to get to the 250? We subtracted that 150, so we're going to put a negative 150 here. So we've got 400 plus negative 150 equals our final elevation was that 250. So there would be our addition equation. to represent the situation. So we only used addition on this, even though we were going down. That is a completely possible thing to take and do. All right, the second part of this is taking and drawing a number line. So for my number line, got 0 all the way down here. We're going to go all the way up to 400. So 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350. Okay, my 400's in the wrong spot. It's okay. Okay, so we've got our number line started. Now we want to show how far, so we want to show our starting value. So we went up the 400 to get to our starting initial value of that 400. But then we went down the 150 to get to our final of 250. So using a number line, hopefully you guys can see that okay. Bring this a little closer. So using this number line, there we go, you can take and represent what's happening in our equation using the number line. So sometimes that can help in visualizing what's happening and figuring out what the solution should be if you get confused. So by all means, if dealing with these negatives is tricky, because negatives do make things more complicated because you're adding something. So seeing addition, you think, okay, I'm going to get to a larger number, but we're adding a negative number, so we're actually subtracting. So it can get a little confusing at first. So by all means, using a number line like this can definitely help you with that. All right. Okay, let's look at another example. So let me bring you back down. Oops, not what I wanted. There we go. Sorry, new technology. It's confusing me. All right, next question. A spelunker is down in a cave next to the cliff. If she climbs down deeper into the cave, this will be a negative change. If she climbs up, whether inside the cave or out of the cave and up the cliff, this will be a positive change. We want to complete the table. So just like last time, we're going to take and complete this table based on the change to get to our final elevation. It's just now, instead of having a starting point at positive 400, we have a starting point at negative 200. So we're starting out at a negative value. All right, let me increase the size of this to make it easier to write on. Okay, so starting elevation, we're at negative 200, and we go down another 150. So we're already down here at negative 200, and now we're dropping even further. So what should our final elevation be? Negative 350. So because we're going down further, it's still going to be negative because we're subtracting more off of that 200. But because it's a negative, it's almost like we're adding it because we're going further negative. That's kind of how I always think about it. If we have a negative number and we're subtracting from it, we're going further negative. So we're getting to a larger negative number, which really is a smaller number, but it's negative. So that's what makes it smaller, but also larger, the further negative. Yeah, I know, kind of confusing. Okay, starting elevation, negative 200, but this time we're going up 100. So we're down here at negative 200, and now we're going up 100. So what's going to happen? Are we still going to be at a negative number? Yeah, we're still going to be negative because this is only 100. We don't make it all the way to that break even of 0 yet. So we're still going to be negative, and we're going to be at a negative 100. All right, the next one, situation C. We're at negative 200, and we go up 200. So where does that put us? At 0, which remember is neither positive nor negative. All right, and situation D. She was at that negative 200. She went up 250. So what's her final elevation? So last time she went up the 200 and made it to 0. So this time she's going up 250. So she should be at 50 on the that's supposed to be a positive sign. Hang on the positive side. So she went more than what she was down below in the cave. So she went up higher onto the cliff 50 feet. All right, and this very last one, E, once again, it's in a little bit different order. So once again, we want to take and look at how do we get from that negative 200 down to negative 500? What do we have to do? We went down how much? 300. So 300, and let me write down. So she went down that 300 to get to the negative 500. All right, now, just like last time, we want to write an addition. Oops. God, I can't use my finger to scroll on the screen. Sorry. We want to write an addition equation and draw a number line for C and D, and including the starting elevation, change, and final elevation for each. So if we look, C, we started at negative 200. Let's see, let me make this bigger so you guys be able to see it on the whiteboard over here. On this, make it smaller. Oops. Yeah. That doesn't go really well, does it? Okay, well, maybe if I bring myself down a little bit. There we go. Kind of, sort of. Okay, so for 2B, what we're looking at here, we have, I know I'm going to get really small down here, but it works. So for C, our equation, well, we start at negative 200. Then remember, we're working on adding, so we're going to add, what was our change on C? 200, and that equaled our 0. So for our number line, we're going to have negative 200. We're going to go by hundreds on this one, so negative 100 and 0. So we were all the way down at negative 200, then we came all the way back to 0 to get to our final. So this is for C. Now for D, if we look at that one, we started at negative 200 again. We add 250 to get to 50. So everything that we already did in our table. Now for the number line, starting down here at negative 200, we go all the way down to negative 200. Then we go back up 250, which puts us at 50. So once again, using that number line to show the change, to show how we went from our starting value to the ending value, and representing where, sea level, that baseline 0 feet is. All right. Okay, so for the letter C, it asks, what does the expression negative 75 plus 100 tell us about the splunker? What does the value of the expression tell us? So negative 75 plus 100. Well, to start, what does the negative 75 represent? It tells us the splunker started at an elevation of negative 75 feet. Then what happened? It says plus 100. So what happens then? She goes up. Goes up 100 feet. So what does the value of the expression, so what would the result be Well, if we take negative 75 and we